All right. Good evening and good night, and welcome to the It's Your Perspective Talk Show. It is Thursday, February 19th, 2015. My name is David, a.k.a. Kimba, a.k.a. Christian, alongside
Bingy Soup.
Yes, I Soup. Here we are again, man.
Yes, I.
Yeah, we took a little break last night, but we're back. This is the It's Your Perspective Talk Show every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 8 p.m. until. We do have a telephone number. Hit us up at 340 201-9005. You can also text us on that number too. Text will pop in right here on this phone. We'll see it. We'll definitely read your comment or your question on air tonight. We do have a special guest, author Gary James. He's back again. There he is right there, Gary. Wave to the crowd. You are streaming at her right now. But before we get with Gary,
Gary's a mess, you know.
Yeah, he's.
I like that.
Don't get me
before we get on, man, Soup, you ready?
Yes, I.
Soup is going to bless us with the It's Your Perspective poem. Soup, you ready?
Greetings, Rastafari lives. The greatest secret in life is that reality is nothing more than illusion. The physical world does not exist outside of our own belief system and the filter of our own mind. We are, in fact, subparticles of Jah experiencing creation itself. But as subparticles of Jah, we have swayed over these creations. Everything you have experienced in life, every event, occurrence, object, and person is nothing more than a figment of your own thoughts, beliefs, and words. The problem is, most of us are still asleep. The problem is, most of us are still asleep. When you understand this, your entire world shifts and you come to realize the true meaning of life is thus like a lucid dream. We have total control.
Yes, I Soup, man. Thanks for blessing the show, man. For since April of last year, 2014, Soup has been blessing us with the It's Your Perspective poem. And also, too, our guest tonight was back in April, too.
Yes,
so we definitely want to say thank you, Gary James, for helping us out.
I was on your maiden voice.
He was on the maiden voice, that's right.
And he is still here. Just got to say thank you.
Yes, I.
Even made a post alluding to that too last night when we didn't come on, saying that you're going to be on tonight and that you were here from the beginning. So thank you, man. Really appreciate that.
Yes, I.
But real quick, we're going to run through some things here. I just want to say that we are in a high-tech, low-tech studio. Coming to you from an undisclosed location here in the beautiful island of St. Croix, Virgin Islands. No radio, no TV, internet only, which means that you have to go to our website, streaming live from the vi.com. Go to that website, click on Watch Us Live, Soup, and guess what?
They're going to see us live.
Man, that's how that goes down.
Yes,
all our shows, 120 plus right now, are on YouTube. You can even see our guest tonight at his first show when he was on here. All that stuff is on YouTube. Just get on there and just spend an afternoon, just looking through our shows. They're all entertaining. We got some good ones on there. John 9 was here last week as well, so big ups to her and the crew. But also, too, I just want to say that I want to give a shout out to our CHS class in 1982. Big ups to that whole crew. So we had a classmate pass away here.
Who that?
I can't think of his name right now, but I did see it on FB.com.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's in the book. Somebody that I didn't really deal with in particular.
Right.
He did graduate with us in '82. So
wow, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, man. So big ups to the whole family there and the whole crew there. Just stay positive, stay focused. Vanessa at Rhythms, iGrade Records, iGrade Dub. Thank you, Julie and Cherise King, and all our past guests that have been on the show. You can also reach us on Twitter. Our handle there is VI Perspective. And we are moving straight forward and up. The show's mission is just simply to empower and inform everyone.
Yes, sir.
But most important, I want to say one more time, our telephone number, 340-201-9005. You can reach us there if you have any questions or comments for our guest tonight. So I don't even know, do we need to take a break or you ready to go? You ready to roll?
We could start rolling.
Yeah, okay, man.
You know, I'm going to
there he is right there.
Continue the conversation on race and the religion dimension. In fact, we're going to call this Race and the Religion Dimension 2, because last show we introduced it, and so this is a follow-up since we weren't able to deal with all the items we had on our menu. You know, Soup with his very interesting and provocative input moves us on different tracks
Okay.
that we love to explore. So we appreciate that, and it makes us develop further
Right.
these conversations. And so we're pleased to have your continued
And
input,
Gary is
my
needed
brother.
because I don't think nobody else is doing it. Nobody else is saying it. Nobody else is doing
That's
it. You know?
right.
So I think that is very needed. You understand?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm with you 100%, bro. But we're going to follow up on our last conversation about race and the religion dimension. We posited that the perennial controversy between religion and science is 90% settled, with 10% remaining. And based on current scientific evidence, the idea of multiple races of human beings has been thoroughly discredited and debunked, as science asserts and affirms that there is but one human race that comprises all of the people on planet Earth today. Hence, all human beings originate from one mother that lived in East Africa thousands of years ago. And we explored the multiple race myth in the context of its hierarchical nature, identified as a social construct that was contrived to achieve subjective outcomes during the age of reason. And we briefly examined in previous conversations the role that race plays in structures, institutions, and societal sensibilities, as well as in politics, education, employment, and virtually all other aspects of society. And we began the conversation on race and the religion dimension, and we're continuing that. As we approach the religion dimension by observing the historical procession of Christology. The word Christology refers to the world of Judeo-Christianity in the context of the Eastern and Western historical procession of Christianity. We in the United States and the West view Christianity in the framework of the Roman Catholic and Protestant Reformation dichotomy. But Judeo-Christianity has a parallel history dating back to the earliest days of the faith. From its advent in the Middle East, Christianity was a diverse religion as it proliferated in Africa and Asia during the first 3 centuries. Respective churches and ethnic groups appropriated Christianity as it spread throughout the world by way of zealous, vociferous, and committed adherents. During this period of wanton persecutions and prosecutions, the respective Eastern Orthodox Christians proliferated in the form of the Ethiopian, Egyptian, Greek, Syrian, Armenian, Russian Orthodox churches, etc. Until Roman Emperor Constantine signed the Treaty of Milan in 313, which ended their infamous reign of terror against Christianity. So prior to the conversion of Emperor Constantine to Christianity, Rome had a colorful history of persecuting Christians. Following the emperor's adoption of Christianity, Rome, by way of its domination, established a new, colorful dispensation of Christian history. Christianity, as we learned and experienced it in America and Europe, began in 325 AD, following the First Ecumenical Council, known as the Council of Nicaea, which formally established the Roman Catholic dominance of world Christianity. The Eastern Orthodox branch of churches essentially acquiesced to Rome's domination as advanced during the proceedings of the council. But the bishops of the Ethiopian Orthodox contingent were excommunicated from the council and all future councils because of differences, ecclesiastical and doctrinal differences between the Ethiopian contingent and Rome. Subsequently, Rome enjoyed more than 1,200 years of an exclusive monopoly on Christianity in the West until the 1600s and the advent of the Protestant Reformation. Consequently, we in the Western Hemisphere experience Christianity in the framework of Roman Catholics and Protestant denominational churches. In the context of how we in the West learn and experience the faith, Christianity is often perceived as a white man's religion based on the iconographic and associated with the faith, as well as the popular Greco-Roman historical narrative. The significance of the fact that the Roman Catholic Church was established 300 plus years after the fact is generally lost to historical revisionism. World Christianity is comprised of two distinctly different historical narratives, but they are parallel accounts and represent a holistic appreciation of the Judeo-Christian religion. But this is not a conversation regarding the contribution of Africa to world Christianity. We are exploring race and the religion dynamic. As we have already discussed, race and electoral politics, police profiling, and discrimination based upon race in housing, employment, education, and the criminal justice system. During our previous conversations, I offered a full disclosure of my faith and issued a disclaimer as to the fact that we are not proselytizing in any way. And we made the observation that the spirit and invisible realm is immutable, omnipresent, omnipotent, and organized religion operates in the material world of phenomena, which is finite and cannot impact the integrity or in any way influence the disposition of the spirit, the invisible or infinite realms. Therefore, the respective religions of Abraham render their interpretation of the immutable spirit realm in order to make this spirit realm accessible to the people at large by way of their intercession. This is our general theological thesis, and we promote it in the framework of religious appreciation and ecumenical culture. Specifically, we offer a narrative of the famous navigator, Christopher Columbus, who reportedly discovered the New World, also known as North and South America, and the islands of the Caribbean. The efficacy of the popular race paradigm, as well as the religion dimension, may have taken form following the discovery of the New World. The dynamic of religion in relation to multiple races is an interesting and controversial discourse, and it currently exists, but we offer a perspective that occurred as a subtext and context of the popular American and European history as we all are exposed to. The 4 voyages of Columbus to the New World is an infamous story, and in some quarters it exploits the exploits of the Spanish explorer is nothing less than infamous. Apart from the role of Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand in financing the voyages of Columbus in 1492, that date looms large in history. Concomitantly in 1492, that date marks that the Spanish Queen and King, in conjunction with the papacy, the Vatican, regained control of Spain from the Moors. In 1492 that occurred. The Moors had ruled Spain under Islam from the 8th century to 1492. After reclaiming rule in Spain, they, the king and queen, in conjunction with the Vatican, deported all the Jews or committed barbaric acts against those who would not convert to Roman Catholicism. It's a very colorful history that should be researched to glean some meaning from current events and what has constituted them. Interestingly enough, a rabbi colleague of mine who heads perhaps the most diverse synagogue in New York City, Freedom Synagogue in Flushing, informed me that the 700 years in Spain under Islam is currently considered the golden age of Jewry.
Yes, it is. Yes, it was.
Which is not a part of the popular historical narrative.
Right.
Now juxtapose that narrative of the 7th century to the 15th centuries with the current dynamic between Judaism and Islam and Christianity in the world. And you get a distinctly different picture. And the contrast is stunning. And the colorful history of the Roman Catholic Inquisition is noteworthy. But we'll put a pin in it right there. We may deal with that further in subsequent conversations. We want to focus on 1492 in the context of Columbus and us in the New World.
And two, Gary, let me just, can I interject something
Sure.
too?
Yeah, please.
10 years prior to that, 1482 is when he was when Michelangelo was commissioned to paint that famous picture of Christ and his 12 disciples.
Absolutely.
And when the Pope came to him and asked him to paint the picture, the first thing he said, to paint a Caucasian picture, the first thing he said to the Pope is that I never saw a Caucasian picture of the Christ and the disciples. So where am I going to get these models from? He went to his uncle, and he went to get 12 prisoners, and that's how it manifested 10 years before he came out here in the West. So all of that is
yeah. Well, you make an interesting point, because the fact is the iconography of Jesus and the
disciples, yes,
was absolutely appropriated by Rome. And these images pretty much sealed in stone the idea of the Greco-Roman dominance of Christianity, and the fact of it being perceived as the white man's religion.
That's right.
And that is essentially how it has been promoted and perceived
up to today.
Up to
right now.
Right now.
Yes.
In fact, the stuff that I'm talking about, that I've studied, the theology that I've studied from the Eastern Orthodox and the Ethiopian tradition, has been airbrushed out of history, you see. And so this is why this discussion on race and the religion dynamic is important.
Have to take place.
Because there are some things that went down that really has not surfaced.
Exactly.
But as things are being revealed in this age of information,
that's right,
things will eventually bubble up to the top. And as many folks say, truth crushed to earth will rise again.
Yes,
and that's how it is. And we could take it from a few other levels.
Right.
But I don't want to get carried away with that, because Soup is doing his thing.
That's right.
Again.
Take a sip.
So we're going to take we're going to put a pin in Soup.
Yes,
and we're going to continue and focus on 1492 in the context of Columbus and the New World.
Right.
And just months after Columbus returned to Europe from his maiden voyage to the New World, Spanish-born Pope Alexander VI gave Spain a head start in the quest for domination over newly discovered regions of the world.
Right.
The Pope decreed that all land discovered west of a meridian 100 leagues west of the Cape Verde Islands should belong to Spain, while new lands discovered east of that line would belong to Portugal. This papal bull also specified that all lands already under the control of a Christian prince would remain under that same control. This limiting line made Portugal angry. So King John II, the nephew of Prince Henry the Navigator, negotiated with King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain to move the line. King John's rationale to Ferdinand and Isabella was that the Pope's line extends all around the globe, thus limiting Spanish influence to Asia. On June 7, 1494, Spain and Portugal met at Tordesillas, Spain, and signed a treaty that moved the line from 270 leagues west to 370 leagues west of Cape Verde. This new line gave Portugal more claim to South America, yet also provided Portugal with an automatic control over the Indian Ocean. While it would be several hundred years before the line of the Treaty of Tordesillas could be accurately determined, Portugal and Spain kept to their sides of the line quite well. Portugal ended up colonizing the places like Brazil, in South America, in India, and Macau in Asia. Brazil's Portuguese-speaking population is a result of this treaty. And for those who might want to research the treaty, it is spelled Todesillas. The Treaty of Tordesillas. Portugal and Spain ignored an order from the Pope and enacted their treaty, but all was reconciled by Pope Julius II, who agreed to the change in 1506. So effectively, by way of Spain and Portugal, the Pope divided the world in half between the two. This is in the backdrop of Rome appropriating Christianity and monopolizing it. So an important piece to begin to discuss the race dimension, the race and the religion dimension, because we can see the development of the world, of the new world, as it was being approached by Rome, the Roman Catholic Church et al. So accordingly, the heretofore unknown world was virtually divided between the first colonial masters, Spain and Portugal. This treaty facilitates what is known in history as the doctrine of discovery, which applied to the acquisition of land inhabited by heathens. They can just take it. In the Caribbean, for example, Spain enjoyed the lion's share of territory as they conquered and occupied the larger islands of Cuba, Hispaniola, and Puerto Rico, and paid little attention to the smaller islands. The Spanish were interested in exploring for gold, silver, and precious metals. Although the Spanish were the first Europeans to claim possession of St. Croix in particular, they didn't occupy the island. However, when the English settled on the island, Spain promptly routed them, but soon after left the island again. Other European countries followed the established lead by Spain and Portugal, and the doctrine of discovery provided the impetus for their land acquisitions in the New World. The British, the French, Dutch, Germans, Belgians, the Danes, etc., all followed Spain and Portugal in their New World land acquisition and engagement in the transatlantic enslavement of Africans. This economic enterprise that positioned Africans as less than human beings, characterized as property and beasts of burden, animated the European colonists, and much of their economies were established as a result of this peculiar enterprise over the centuries. The transatlantic slave trade was prolific in the respective countries of the European colonial masters, as well as on their colonies in the Caribbean and the New World venues. A significant feature associated with the rule of these various colonial masters was the role of the Christian missionary component. Eventually, the general public within the colonial countries became resentful of this peculiar enterprise, and local opposition reached critical mass. Even the populations in the European colonies and on the mainland European countries were ultimately incensed by the enslavement of Africans and the slave trade. Therefore, during various periods in the 19th century, the institution of slavery was abolished. Slavery was abolished in the British West Indies in 1833, the Danish West Indies in 1848, and the United States in 1865, and all of the respective colonial masters abolished slavery during that period. But during the transatlantic slave trade, the various European powers operated in the coastal areas around the continent of Africa, primarily in the western coastline areas. Europeans never ventured, for the most part, into the interior of Africa. However, Belgium and the Portuguese are obvious exceptions. With the abolition of slavery, the European powers came to a gentleman's agreement, which is characterized in history as the Scramble for Africa, which began in 1874 and culminated in 1884 at the Berlin Conference. The abolition of slavery had a serious impact, negative impact, on the bottom line and needs associated with economic needs associated with industrial development that was going on in the European countries. And so the European powers targeted the interior of Africa. And the Berlin Conference, petitioned Africa into 50 separate countries and positioned them as colonial possessions of 15 European countries. Now, what I want to do at this point is I'm going to read some research that I did regarding the scramble for Africa and the Berlin Conference, the results of the Berlin Conference. And I can see where we're going. And I just want to say from the outset, this is part 2 of race and the religion dimension. But we're going to do one more part 3, and we'll do that next time, because I want to deal with the following subject matter in terms of how Africa and the Caribbean went through a metamorphosis as a result of the Berlin Conference. And I'm sure you've heard of the Monroe Doctrine as well. We're not going to touch on that here. But this is why I want to deal with part 3, because I want to get, in part 3, I want to get into the guts of the matter in terms of the religion dynamic and race. Because the religion dynamic, generally speaking, supported the multiracial paradigm, and they promoted racial distinctions and the hierarchical relationship which positioned Africans at the bottom of the pecking order. But we have to note that while Columbus and his voyages and the doctrine of discovery was promoted, what it subsequently did was provide a backdrop that we will get into in much greater detail. But following the abolition of slavery, the scramble for Africa gave the prevailing European powers the virtual whole continent, including 30 new colonies and protectorates, 10 million square miles of new territory, and 110 million days new subjects, acquired by one method or another. Subsequently, Africa was sliced up like a cake, the pieces swallowed up by 5 rival nations: Germany, Italy, Portugal, France, Britain, with Spain taking some scraps as Britain and France were trying to take each other out. At the center of the exploitations and rivalries was the self-styled philanthropist, the Belgian King Leopold II, controlling the center of the African continent, well known as the Belgian Congo. Historians have over the years offered theories and speculations as to why the leaders of Europe undertook such an undignified rush to build empires in Africa. Historians are puzzled now as they were then. In his book, The Partition of Africa in 1893, Scott Kelty was certain that it was one of the most remarkable episodes in the history of the world. Yet he was confused and overwhelmed by the rush of jostling events. But subsequently, it was the Berlin Conference that was Africa's undoing in more ways than one, as the colonial powers superimposed their domains on the African continent. During that time, the conference was held, 80% of Africa remained under traditional, indigenous, and local control. What ultimately resulted was a hodgepodge of geometric boundaries that divided Africa into 50 irregular countries. This new map of the continent was superimposed over 1,000 indigenous cultures and organic regions of Africa. The new countries lacked rhyme or reason. It divided coherent groups of people and merged together disparate groups who really didn't get along. In 1884, at the request of Portugal, German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck called together the major Western powers of the world to negotiate the questions and end the confusion over the control of Africa. Bismarck appreciated the opportunity to expand Germany's sphere of influence over Africa and desired to force Germany's rivals to struggle with one another for territory. 14 European countries were represented by a plethora of ambassadors when the conference opened in Berlin on November 15, 1884. The countries represented at the time included Austria-Hungary, Belgium, Denmark, France, Germany, Great Britain, Italy, the Netherlands, Portugal, Russia, Spain, Sweden, Norway, Turkey, and the United States of America. Of these 14 nations, France, Germany, Great Britain, and Portugal were the major players in the conference, controlling most of the colonial Africa at the time. The initial task of the conference was to agree to the Congo River and the Niger River mouths and basins would be neutral and open to trade. Despite its neutrality, part of the Congo Basin became the personal kingdom of the Belgium's King Leopold II, and under his rule, over half of the region's populations died. At the time of the conference, only the coastal areas of Africa were colonized by the European powers. At the Berlin Conference, the European colonial powers scrambled to gain control over the interior of the continent. The conference lasted until February 26, 1885, a 3-month period where colonial powers haggled over geometric boundaries in the interior of the continent, disregarding the cultural and linguistic boundaries already established by the indigenous African populations. Following the conference, the give and take continued. By 1914, the conference's participants had fully divided Africa among themselves into 50 countries. Major colonial powers holdings included Great Britain desired a Cape to Cairo collection of colonies. Egypt Sudan, Uganda, Kenya, South Africa, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Nigeria, and Ghana. France took much of Western Africa, with Mauritania, from Mauritania to Chad, French West Africa, Gabon, the Republic of the Congo, French Equatorial Africa. Belgium and King Leopold II controlled the Democratic Republic of Congo, Belgian Congo. Portugal took Mozambique in the east and Angola in the west. Italy's holdings were Somaliland and a small portion of Ethiopia. I must make the point, a small portion, because Ethiopia was the only country on the continent that was not colonized by the European powers. The only one. We'll get into that too. Germany took Namibia, German Southwest Africa it was called, and Tanzania, German East Africa. Spain claimed the smallest territory, Equatorial Guinea. Although Spain controlled the smallest country relative to the spoils of Africa, Spain had already seized the lion's share of the Caribbean islands as compared to other European countries that held slave plantation colonies in the Caribbean. But the historiography of these events has offered various theories concerning the high-profile rivalries among European powers as to their respective objectives. There are the Eurocentric explanations, such as offered by John Hobson's theory that surplus capital in Europe was the driving force behind the expansion into Africa. This theory was also propounded later by Vladimir Lenin. In the Afrocentric explanation, emphasis was placed on sub-imperialism in Africa itself and combinations of the two by way of an analysis of Professor Robinson and Gallagher. Africa and the Victorians, that's their work. Other historians of Africa, like the Cambridge History of Africa, regional studies such as John Hargrave's studies relative to the partition of West Africa, and numerous works during the imperialisms of each individual European country. Needless to say, there is no general explanation acceptable to historians. Perhaps they should not be expected to have general agreement as to why European powers undertook extraordinary adventure. But perhaps David Livingstone and his associates advocated the most cogent and compelling theory relative to the European powers' abounding interest in Africa. David Livingstone, the celebrated missionary explorer, died in May 1873 in Elia, the unknown heart of the continent, and his sun-dried body was brought home to be buried in Westminster Abbey. Livingstone sounded a call for a worldwide crusade to open up Africa. A new slave trade organized by Swahili and Arabs in East Africa was eating out the heart of the continent. Livingstone's answer was the 3 C's: commerce, Christianity, and civilization. The freelance promoters of the petition, the men who followed Livingstone to Africa and scrambled it greedily for their share, are now pretty much forgotten. In their day, however, they were famous, infamous, and feted as heroes, at the same time being denounced as brutes and humbugs. They all conceived of the crusade for Africa in terms of romantic nationalism, if not imperialism. From the outset, European governments were somewhat reluctant to intervene officially as it relates to the electorate of many people. Nevertheless, there seemed to be a real chance of missing out on something. The bygone centuries, colored by the transatlantic slave trade, had already proven to be an economic dynamo, helping to facilitate the industrial development of the European powers. On a practical level, the conquest, partition of Africa was seen as a lottery, and winning a ticket might earn glittering prizes. There were dreams of El Dorado, of diamonds and mines and gold fields crisscrossing the Sahara. In Europe, these were the drab years of the Great Depression and mounting stocks of unsold Manchester cotton, Lillian silk, and Hamburg gin. Perhaps Africa was the answer to the merchant's prayers. There might be new markets out there in the African golden Garden of Eden, where tropical groves of golden fruit could be plucked by willing brown hands. And it was in Protestant Britain where God and Mammon seemed made for each other. The Livingstone's word struck the deepest chord. The 3 C's would redeem Africa. This was obviously not the way Africans perceived the scramble. Accordingly, there was a 4th C, vis-a-vis conquest, and that is what gradually dominated the enterprise. So here we are, and we'll pick. How are we doing on time?
We're okay. It's we're maybe another 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we'll just introduce next week and make some commentary on this. So we see the move following the abolition of slavery, which really dealt with the coastal areas of the continent of Africa. And we see that for whatever reason, the Berlin Conference and the result of the Berlin Conference divided Africa into the countries that we know today. There's 50 plus countries, maybe 53, 54 countries.
So Gary, it was just one nation. It was
one continent. There was various cultures, nations, and ethnic groups.
Okay.
You see, very diverse.
Right. Right.
Very diverse.
Yes. Yes.
You know, there were large kingdoms and empires.
Yes.
You know, in East Africa,
Africa.
where we know
Right.
of Ethiopia and Egyptian. In West Africa, you know of Mali
Mali.
and other
Yes. Senegal.
empires, Senegal,
Senegal. Yes.
and other empires. And of course, in the southern region, you had the Zulus.
Zulus. Yes. Right.
You see.
Yes.
And so it was various countries and peoples and hundreds of different languages.
Right.
And various ethnic groups, you see.
Okay.
And the color spectrum was profound.
I could imagine.
You know.
I could imagine.
But they were African, indigenous African people.
Yes.
That you know, lived in their indigenous lands and countries that were invaded by the Berlin Conference, and by force of arms, because that's what it was about.
Right. Right.
You see, by force of arms, they managed to subdue Africa, you see, and they had the authority of the Pope in terms of the doctrine of discovery, you see. And so they had, in their view, a divine right to do what they were doing, because as was pointed out, they had the right as Europeans to discover the world and convert the heathens to Christianity. And those princes who were already Christian in their countries were cool. You know, there were other Europeans. You know, so the objective was to move on Africa. And the missionaries played a primary role in pulling that off. But we don't want to lose sight of the fact that, the slave trade occurred in the 15th century and was abolished by the 19th century. And the 19th century, 10 years after it was abolished, slavery was abolished in the United States, the scramble for Africa
Took place.
In fact, you could Google that. That's something that's researchable. Scramble for Africa on one level, and Berlin Conference on another level.
Right.
And you'll get more in-depth information
Right.
than what I've just discussed. But the point is, which leads into our discussion next time, the point is, Christianity came to Rome 300 years after the fact. So they appropriated it and interpreted it to the world.
Yes.
You see?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, what the Eastern Orthodox tradition of Christianity, which predates Roman Catholicism, you know, the persecution by the Roman Empire of them was one thing, but now after Constantine was converted, was self-converted, and dominated Christianity in the 4th century, their reinterpretation of the faith was one thing, but what they did in addition to that, which is not discussed often, is they went around, because Rome controlled the known world.
World, right.
They dominated Christianity. Therefore, all of the other Christians, which predates Rome, had to hide their documents, because Rome was about burning books and documents.
Yes.
So, and of course we see the Dead Sea Scrolls emerging and the Nag Hammadi library. You know, these things were hidden. Of course, they tell fabulous stories about why they were hidden. But they were hidden because Rome had the footprint on the known world.
Yes.
And if you didn't subscribe to their rendition of Christianity, your stuff was burned, you was killed, you know.
Yes.
And so you had to chill out. So that was the essential environment and climate during that period.
Okay.
But we don't want to lose sight of the fact in fact, I'll mention this preceding the next time. Now, if Rome came 300 years after the fact to Christianity, the Judeo-Christian scriptures were already in place.
Right. Yes.
You see?
Yes.
So, what we have, well, at that point, you had the original Hebrew
scriptures, right.
And that, from the Hebrew, the scriptures were translated to the Greek, because Greek was the lingua franca.
Right.
That was the popular deal. And that was the part of the Greco-Roman paradigm.
Right.
So Greeks were cool, you see. And from the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, it was then translated to Latin. And that was the exclusive province of Rome. So all other scriptures, all other Bibles had to be burned, had to be discarded, had to be kept out of the view of the dominant Roman Catholic Church. And so many of the Eastern Orthodox churches acquiesced to the power of Rome. The Ethiopian bishops did not. They were the only ones who didn't, and for specific reasons, because they had a direct heritage.
That's right.
And lineage.
That's
that
right.
They had to defend, you see?
Right.
And so the 66 Bibles, the 66 books of today's Bibles were actually extracted from the 81 books of the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible. You see, you have 15 additional books
added, taken
away. And those 15 books are major
The story of Adam and Eve.
The story of Adam, which is a big deal, in Jubilees.
Yes.
You see? And so within the conventional 66 books, you don't get the offspring of Adam and Eve.
That's right.
You get Cain and Abel in that scenario.
Right.
But it's within the book of Jubilees that you read about Adam and Eve and their children.
Yes.
And you learn that Cain married one of his younger sisters.
Right.
And they begot Enoch. You see? And so Enoch, there's a whole book
of course
of Enoch,
yes,
which is an essential book in terms of understanding Christianity, because Enoch speaks in the first person.
Yes.
And Enoch is said to have walked with God.
So he went up and
came
down.
You see, so there are some serious things that are contained in the book of Enoch. In the 66 Bibles, Enoch is not mentioned. I think he's mentioned maybe once or twice.
Twice in I think in Genesis and back in Jude.
And that's about it. But they don't tell you anything specific about Enoch. And Enoch was a serious dude.
Serious dude.
And that's a serious book.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
So there are many other features that have not been included, that have been airbrushed out of history as we have, as we see it, as we have learned it, you know. But the fact remains, and in fact, Enoch is the great grandfather of Noah.
That's right.
So, and of course, I grew up as a Roman Catholic. I made completed all my sacraments by the age of 12, and the nuns instructed me that black folk, because I inquired how come there were no black people in the catechism.
Right.
You know. Right. And so one of the nuns told me that because of the curse of Ham, you know, black folk
get eliminated. We get passed by.
Yeah, you know, and that accounts for our color and all that other stuff. So there are many fabulous stories that are out there. But we're going to discuss some of these things because we believe it's really important now, because the events as they are occurring,
that's right,
in today's world,
that's right,
have a basis in history.
That's right.
And it is important for us people, and black people in particular, to understand what is going on by virtue of what took place earlier.
Back then, yes.
You see, and just as we have been convinced that there are many races, you know, and we poor black folk are at the bottom of the pecking order.
Yes.
You know, there are many stories, you know, that have been floated out there. And so we now have a crystallized consciousness of this race thing, you know, and everybody and everywhere will talk about racial diversity, you know, no racial discrimination. All of us are, see, because there's an interest in perpetuating this false notion, this myth of these races.
Right.
But science has come to the table in terms of current findings but that's not going to be translated in the popular public discourse.
Right.
And for that to develop further, for the scholars and scientists to develop that further in the course of trying to translate that into the popular consciousness, they can't do it because scholars and historians work by virtue of funding. You see?
Yep.
And so if your project is not consistent with how the powers that be want to perpetuate things, you ain't gonna get any funding for your project.
Right.
You see?
Yep.
And so we can't expect that although the findings are there, they ain't gonna rewrite
it.
anything.
That's right. That's right.
See, so we have to understand what's really up and what is taking place. So we are in front of the curve and not behind the curve.
Right.
And so we are pleased to play a role in that exposition.
Okay.
And we are pleased that Soup inspires us to take things further.
Yes.
And so we'll do that. And so thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. All right, man. So this is the HR Perspective Talk Show. I want to thank our guest tonight, author Gary James. There he is, for coming out again. Definitely is way ahead in the pack of returning guests to our show here. Way ahead. But real quick, Soup, this is the HR Perspective Talk Show every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 8 p.m. until. Telephone number is 340-201-9005. You can also text us on that number too. But most importantly, you got to go to our website, streaming live from the VI.com, in order to see this show. Go to our website and click on Watch Us Live, and guess what? You'll see us live. Check out all our recorded live shows on YouTube and Ustream.tv. Just get on those websites and just search for our channel. It's Your Perspective Talk Show, and they'll pop right up. We have 2 Facebook pages. We're on Twitter, VI Perspective, and we're moving straight forward and up. The show's mission is just simply to inform and empower everyone. So real quick, Superman, any final words?
Thank you again, Gary. Rastafari live.
You're quite welcome, my brother. And you know, like I always tell you, I love what you brothers are doing, and there's nothing you could do about it.
All right.
When are we on again on what, the first Sunday? The first Thursday in
yes, actually, you're right.
In March.
The 5th, yeah. Gary will be back on the 5th of March again. This is actually going to be on the 5th. Today was part 7.
Right.
And then on the 5th, it'll be part 8.
Right.
So definitely tune in for that. I'll be posting on that as well as we get closer in on that. For me, my final words are our prayers and his blessings. When you put them all together, you get one perfect love. We're off, Soup, finally here for a week.
Yes, sir.
4 days straight.
Yep.
We'll be back next week, Tuesday. What's that date on Tuesday? Tuesday is the 24th.
24th.
We got guests lined up already for that week. On that note, we're out. Peace.
Peace.
Is